All right, guys. Should we do this? Let's go. Welcome to the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast. This is Josh Wilbank, and you can find me on Twitter at ShortYoshi127. I'm here with Casey Yardley.
What up, podcast world? You can find me on Twitter at I am Casey Lee.
And, of course, Vince Bradley.
Hey, at Vince Bradley over on Twitter. I really don't have much on there right now, but I'm hoping to fix that soon. So maybe give me a follow, and it might be worth your time later.
Yes, definitely. We all are going to be getting on our Twitters a lot more, tweeting our movie thoughts, everything. So go ahead and check us out. And we are excited to be here this week talking about movies with you. This week's movie is Spider-Man Homecoming. And we all watched it this week. We have a lot of good thoughts about it, a lot of good notes. We've thought about it a lot all week, and so
I took notes for this movie. I sat down. It was like 11 o'clock at night. My wife was in bed. I pulled out my phone, my notes, and I watched this movie. And I took very little notes, but there were specific things where I was just like, I want to talk about this. I have to write it down.
And I was watching the movie, but we had to pause it 3 times so I could go check on my dog because she was being so irritating.
Yeah, so we're pretty excited. Obviously, like I mentioned last week, we've got Vince and I's, second reactions or however many times we've seen it, reactions to the movie, and Casey, who's watching it for the first time this week, we'll see how he reacted to it.
I'm a new infant. I was born again to watch this movie.
Which I was so surprised because Casey's always, we've seen a lot of the Marvel movies together, a lot of different things. So we're pretty excited to be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming this week. But first, really quick, we're just going to go over stuff that we've been watching, what's coming out in theaters soon, just a little bit of movie news. Casey, what you been up to recently?
I did watch the first 3 episodes that Hulu released of The Handmaid's Tale. What a great series. I'm loving it. A lot of people feel like it's a very controversial series. I don't need to get into that, right? This isn't about politics, it's about movies. But if you like a good story and are curious about, the world as it could be, check it out. And also, I continue to watch a little bit more of Good Omens, and I love it. Great way to portray a great book. That's what I've been on this week.
I've never even heard of Good Omens until you mentioned it last week. I saw the ads on it last week and stuff, but I kind of just wrote it off as some goofy looking, Amazon series that will disappear. But I can't, I'm hearing about this show everywhere now. Lots of people are loving it.
Yeah, you most definitely, Vince, you've got to watch it, and anyone out there should give it a try. It's one of those that it'll make you think a little bit, and I kind of like it because, and I'm not trying to give off any spoilers, right? But we have been led to believe, and kind of a lot of us see the world one way, and this kind of helps you see it a different way, which I completely love.
Mm-hmm. I didn't watch a lot. I've been doing a lot of kind of side work, so I'm on my computer a lot and don't want to put something too deep on while I work on it. But I just finished up the series that a buddy of mine recommended to me. It's called Episodes, and the only name kind of that stands out in the whole cast is Matt LeBlanc from Friends, and it stars him and a couple of British actors. I think they wrote the show too, but I wouldn't.
Is it like a comedy, like a sitcom?
Yeah, it's a comedy. It's not like a episode it's not like Seinfeld or Friends or The Simpsons where it has an overarching story throughout the whole thing. But the series is over. I finished the series finale over the weekend, and it was a lot of fun. I would recommend that one too. So I wrapped that up and watched a couple other little Futurama episodes, random stuff, but nothing really.
All the good stuff you got to do. Very nice.
But watch Episodes. It's good. It's on Netflix.
So for me, I've been watching a few different things. It was my wife and I's anniversary, and she's a big Disney lover, so I took her to see Aladdin, which was pretty good. I liked it. I've been watching Chernobyl on recommendation of Casey, and we're looking at maybe talking a little bit more about that in the future.
I got distracted this week, guys, from watching that because I was watching these other films.
I haven't gotten around to it either. So
if you haven't gotten around to it, check it out. It is definitely worth it. I'll say that. And also be looking for an episode in the future where we'll talk a little bit about that. And then also, it was a little bit ago, but I watched The Revenant for the first time, which was...
We talked about that like the first time you watched it the other day. We were driving in a car, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I watched this first time." I was like, I was kind of surprised he hadn't watched it. So maybe that's your guys' surprise that I hadn't watched Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But like, I was like, have you not seen The Revenant?
Well, yeah, so I was just gone when like all the hype and everything about The Revenant was happening, and when the Oscars for it went down, I was out of the country, right? Okay. So I was not here. So, but then I had heard about it and heard word of mouth, but I didn't really look up anything. And I was watching the movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And
that's a beautiful movie.
Oh, it's beautiful. I was looking, and I was, I'm the person who doesn't really like look up stuff about a movie before I watch it. I just watch it, and I'm like, this is amazing. And I watched it, I'm like, the cinematography and the long shots especially, I'm like, this is like so beautiful. And I look it up after, I'm like, oh my god, it's Emmanuel Lubezki. Like, of course it's beautiful. He won an Oscar.
Did you read some of the like production, like the the kind of drama that went on behind scenes?
So crazy, just like it's super controversial.
That's almost as good as the movie itself.
That's true. So anyways, so not to dwell too long on that, because you know that's old news, but did watch it for the first time, loved it. Amazing, super good. So anyways, that's what we've been watching recently, and coming out in theaters soon. We've got a couple of things. Toy Story 4 is coming up, Child's Play is coming up, Dark Phoenix was released recently. So there's a lot of good movies. Make sure that you go to the theater in the summer now, that hopefully you've got some time, and check them out. But yeah, so let's dive into Spider-Man Homecoming, of course, our episode today. And so we're talking about this obviously leading up to another summer movie, which is coming out pretty soon here on July 2nd, which is Spider-Man Far From Home, obviously the second of the Spider-Man movies. So comes out,
get all prepped up for that.
Exactly.
Watch
get excited.
And I don't know, I guess if you haven't seen Endgame, you probably should watch Endgame, right?
Yes, that's probably a pretty big deal.
I haven't seen that either. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. We went in the theater.
Yeah, so Spider-Man Far From Home is coming soon, July 2nd. Check it out, and we'll get you all prepped for it with Spider-Man Homecoming. So, like we do, some quick fun facts for you about Spider-Man Homecoming. It is the second highest grossing film that's ever been made about Spider-Man. The first is Spider-Man 3.
Wait, is that the one with emo Spider-Man, like Spider-Man 3?
Yeah, with
like Venom.
And you can imagine why. I mean, it's coming off the high of Spider-Man 2, which is arguably one of the best superhero movies made. I haven't watched it in years, so don't know if it holds up, but I remember it very fondly. Yeah. So I had the same situation as you. I was out of the country when Spider-Man 3 came out, so I missed all the drama when it released. Came home and tried to watch it, and I couldn't believe how bad that movie was. I hated Spider-Man 3, but Spider-Man 2 was so good that I can only imagine people jumping back in the theater just wanting more comic book stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, this was before the whole MCU and everything like that. So superhero movies were all the hype.
Had Spider-Man and X-Men, maybe a couple Superman and Batman movies, and that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it was huge. So, but either way, though, it's Spider-Man 3 made $890 million, and Spider-Man Homecoming is $880. So it's just right there next to it.
I can't believe that didn't pass it.
I know, it's like right there on the brink. You're like, ugh. But yeah, so it's at 92% on Rotten Tomatoes for the tomato meter and 88% audience score. So overall, good reactions from everyone. And the name Homecoming is both a nod to, they're in high school and the homecoming dance, as well as Spider-Man's re-entry into the Marvel Universe after being with Sony for the other movies. So
4 or 5 movies, I think, before that one.
Well, because you got the 3 and then the 2 Amazing Spider-Man,
the 2 Andrew
right?
Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then just one more thing before we dive into it. Something that I didn't know was that in the original scripts, his mentor was supposed to be Nick Fury and not Tony Stark.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, super interesting. So,
that would make sense. Sorry to interrupt you. That would make sense because I don't remember what cartoon series it was. I think it's the one that was on Disney that kind of was taking inspiration from the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, where he works a lot with Nick Fury. Like, it's kind of the same idea where he's a high school kid, the Avengers are a thing, and then Nick Fury finds out who he is and kind of recruits him and is training him to become an Avenger. So it would make sense that they have this other show. They can kind of derive, kind of get inspiration and stories from that. I like Tony Stark better, though. That relationship is awesome in this movie.
Oh, I mean, and definitely. It's such a big part of what happens in the whole Marvel universe from that point forward, right? So, I mean, everyone has their own opinions, but obviously for me, I think is the right choice to
sure.
go with the starting Tony Stark route. So, anyway, let's get into it. What did you guys think?
Casey, I want to hear your thoughts. Brand new into this movie.
First viewing.
I really liked it. I got really into, like, he felt like a real teenager, right? Like, because I knew that Andrew Garfield wasn't a teenager, and Tobey Maguire, that guy looked like he was like 35. And so it didn't make as much sense based off of what we know, right? And what we kind of thought about. But I liked it. I liked the friendship, that was there. The actual, like, high school was like, what, over 10 years ago now for me. And I see things and, like, was there ever strange moments of surprise, and all of that kind of happens throughout this film. Like, you feel like you're transported back to, I don't know, for some people it's the glory days. For me, it was just an okay time of my life, but I liked it. And then I thought that, I just forgot the guy's name who plays Spider-Man.
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland. He's the guy who spoils every movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he cannot keep a secret. But he did really well, and, like, he fit the part of, like, he has those boyish looks, right? So he's okay to go out there and, like, look like a teenager. Is he young too?
He's like 23 or something like that.
Yeah, so he's 23 now, and that was something I was going to mention when Casey was talking about how it was a little bit more believable. He is the youngest actor to play Spider-Man, because when he started, he was 20, versus when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield started, they were 25 and 26.
Oh, they were only 25 and 26.
Yeah, they look older, but that was
way older. Like, that's
true.
one of the running that's like one of the running jokes on the internet, right? Is like, you go back and you watch the high school scenes of the Tobey Maguire movies, and they look like they're 30 pretending to be high school kids.
It looks like it's like a bad year at a junior college, really. It's like what happened? I'm spoiling the movie. I'm Tom Holland here. No, but I loved it. Like, that was great. I liked the relationship there, and I liked the moment that they meet outside of the main story, right? And that kind of, like, was really cool. So, sorry, I spoiled the whole film, but
we can get into more detail.
Yeah, we can get into more detail, but, like, I loved it. I thought it was good. It fit the bill, and I'm not sad about what happened.
Yes. So we already mentioned, so obviously look out for spoilers ahead, but if you haven't seen it, make sure you go see Spider-Man Homecoming, get it, so that you can get ready for Far From Home and everything. So we'll be diving in pretty deep to it right now. So that's the first reactions from Casey. I was super happy that he liked it, and honestly, with me, I think it's either the second or the third time that I've seen it, and I was surprised because I remember that I had liked it a lot, but I thought that I was, like, a little bit disappointed in a few parts. But when I watched it again, there was only a couple times where I was like, but most of the time I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is so much better than I remember it being even. So I was really surprised, super happy, loved it. Vince, who's seen it before?
I've kind of noticed as I rewatch these Marvel movies, because I am a fanboy. I love comic book movies. But there's a lot that I watched the first time, not including this one. I loved this movie the first time I saw it. It still holds up. But, like, Doctor Strange. When I first saw Doctor Strange, I was underwhelmed. I was like, this movie's not great. Went back and rewatched it, and it was way better than I remember it being.
Yeah.
This movie is fantastic. Like, they do things different. Like we've said, we had 5 movies with Spider-Man, and this one felt fresh. The acting's so good on it. Like, I have very little bad to say about this movie. I absolutely love it. It's probably one of my favorite Marvel movies.
That's definitely true. I feel like what you said about it being fresh, I loved them having the Vulture as the main villain in it, because that was, I mean, in reading stuff online, that was sort of part of their
Green
plan.
Goblin again for the third time.
Exactly. Like, the third time within, like, like 10, 15 years, seeing Green Goblin as the main villain, where obviously in the comics, he's a huge part of it and the main villain of Spider-Man pretty much, but it's just so old. You don't want to see that again, especially when they're revamping it. So I thought it was so nice to have a good new villain that, like you said, it just kept it really fresh, really new, just
definitely
way better.
Yeah, that's all I have to say right there. Like, it's covered. Like, let's
jump into it. Get into spoiler heavy.
Exactly. So pretty spoiler heavy. Vince, go over some of what do you think, like, your favorite parts of the movie are?
You put me on the spot because there's so much good. Like, I absolutely loved the twist, which I don't want to get into yet, I mean, we dropped it.
I'm sorry, I spoiled it already, but
the
we'll
agent,
get into
but
it
I want to
later.
talk about that later because it's towards the end of the movie. But that part is so good. Also, when when Peter Parker is crushed by the building, was a highlight of the movie.
Yes.
Just Tom Holland's performance in that scene is so good.
Come on,
And
Spider-Man.
then, yeah, it's so awesome. And like every scene of this movie, I loved. Like everything that happened, down to the small, little, tiny details of like the moments in the high school of Peter Parker and his buddy. I can't remember his name. Ned. Walking down the hall and seeing the two bad guys walking down the hall towards them. So they hurry and hide behind the wall. And then the two extras, these two little high school kids, who the one high school kid shows up all the time, but he jumps behind the wall. And in the background of the whole scene, they're back in a different room, like playing chess. And then at the end of the scene, the kid walks over, he like taps on the window, like, "What are you doing?" He like looks back, he's like, "Chess," like moments like that, they just stand out. Like there's just so much good on this movie. Everything just worked for me.
Gosh, yeah, definitely agree. There's so many different parts I like. One part for me that I really loved was just how much of it was a good representation of high school, and like we sort of talked about before, it actually felt like high school and not like a bad year at junior college, like we mentioned before, where really them walking down the halls and then being in gym doing the crunches, like I could hear like the fitness gram pacer test would be like, perfect in there or something like that. So, it's all perfect. It threw me back to high school. So just, it put me in that mindset when he's really like that. And something also that's surprising is that the actor was younger, but also the Spider-Man was meant to be younger than the other ones. Because in the other ones, he's either, almost graduating or graduating
Like
in high
a
school.
senior, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in this one, he's meant to be 15. So he'd be like 9th or maybe 10th grade. And so that was definitely...
Is that like a freshman?
Yeah, I think he's a freshman in this one.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think that's sort of what they wanted, because through the next few movies, they sort of build and keep going through high school, is what I saw a couple places. So that was definitely good.
Yeah, the friendships are great. I'm a fiend. I don't know what you want to say. I love friendships. I think that like that development of where can we go as friends and like that kind of trust, where Ned, all he wants to be is like the man in the chair, right? He's like, gotta be back there, gotta be behind the scenes. And he's got like his two computers, he's like swindling back and forth, swinging back and forth, and he's just going for it, and he's like psyched to be a part of it. Like he's like, he just wants to be there. And then I thought that, and I think this is a good quality of the film, but I liked how the teenager was like Peter Parker, he was like a real teenager, right? Mm-hmm. He like meddled around with the suit, did stuff that Tony Stark didn't want him to do. He's like, you messed with like a $20 million suit and you changed it. You took off the parental controls or whatever, right?
Yeah. Like,
what do you have, like a training wheel program? Is that what they call it? So, but one thing I really liked about this Spider-Man that we haven't seen in other films was the suit had like these eyes that like changed and went with it to like go with his expressions. And I think you see that in like the Civil War a little bit, but like this one, like you really get like participate with it and see it in a bigger light. And I love that. Like it shows that Spider-Man isn't just like, and no one can see this, but I like stone face, right? Like it gives
him expressions. You can actually tell what he's thinking other than him saying what he's thinking or emoting. That actually brings me to a little game that I want to play with you guys. My favorite, the reason why I pulled up my phone and started taking notes on this, because I was so impressed not only with the acting and with what was going on in the movie, but when the moment the Vulture shows up and he has this awesome costume, and they were able to this is Marvel. Marvel is the best at translating these corny characters from the comic books from the 60s or whatever, that look like the Vulture in the comic book is in a green leotard with some feathers around his neck. Mm-hmm. And they took this old little man from the comics with a green leotard and turned him into what we see in this movie. This awesome giant wingsuit and fighter pilot costume. Just looks awesome. And the Spider-Man costume too. Like you're saying, they added these details that I never even thought that we needed in the old movies, like the eyes moving and stuff. So that brings me to my little game. I want to rank the 4 Spider-Man live-action spider suits. You
I
can
want the wrestling one. I want the one where he faces the Crusher in the original Spider-Man or whatever that game. I'm kidding.
Bonesaw.
Bonesaw. Bonesaw. Right? That's how he kind of like
Yeah,
says it. He's
Bonesaw
like
is
flexing.
ready.
He's like going crazy.
with
No,
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
He's wearing like a ski mask.
That's the one. That's my nitpick. That's what this movie was missing. The one problem with the whole movie is there was no bone saw. No, so think about it for a minute. I kind of gave you guys a heads up, but think about it for a minute and just 1 to 4. You know, we'll count down 4, 3, 2, and then 1, and then give me your reasons why it's your number 1. We're gonna do the Tobey Maguire suit, just the red one. We're not gonna talk about the black one, even though the black one was just as cool. Yeah. And then Andrew Garfield actually had 2 Spider-Man costumes for each of his movies, and they look a lot different, surprisingly different. I have a picture too here if you guys want to check it out. I think I'll post it on the Instagram too if anybody wants to jump over on the Instagram. Our Instagram feed is just at Pause Rewind Play Podcast, so you can kind of see the picture there, and let me know what you think in the comments, like which one's your favorite. So anyway, so there's the Tobey Maguire one, the 2 Andrew Garfield ones, and just the main Tom Holland red and blue spider suit. Okay?
Perfect.
So,
just as a preface, I did. So I went and I ranked mine, and even though we're sticking to these 4, my real number 1 would obviously be the Mark II, the one in Endgame and Infinity War, because it's got the cool.
Oh right, I didn't even think about that one either.
That one is
no.
God,
So
many
the
of
thing
them
is
now.
that we want to stick to these 4 because there's obviously so many, but that's just in the Avengers. We're gonna stick to the Spider-Man
And
movies.
it does show the Iron Spider suit in this movie, but he never wears it. So we're gonna.
But
leave
it's
that
like
one
the
out.
very end,
Yeah.
so we'll stick away from it. But know that that's like my real number 1.
Right. So if you guys are ready, one of you guys want to go, or I can start us off. If you're ready, take it.
Okay. So, besides the Japanese Spider-Man, which we haven't talked about, I had to go over there. I'm sorry. I brought us back like a minute. I'm sorry, but I'm just throwing us off here with this. I just want to bring a little entertainment to the night.
How dare you?
I think like going down from 4, right? Like,
Here's a photo I'll hold up too, so you can kind of look at him while you're talking.
Like, I really like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man suit because it had more dimensions to it, I feel, because it like kind of gave us a little bit more like detail, and that was probably because they had to do it for cinematography in the early 2000s, right? Probably needed that hand. I don't really like the original Andrew Garfield like suit at all. So that'd be my number 4, like his least favorite. And then I would go with Tobey Maguire's as number 3, just because it's older. Yeah, I'm a little bit nostalgic about it. I liked Andrew Garfield's from Amazing Spider-Man 2. Like, I thought that was really good. And then I'm a fan of Tom Holland's like suit in this movie because so many features. And it wasn't just like a spandex crusader running around, right? Tony Stark put a lot of effort, like going back to this mentorship thing, right? Tony Stark put a lot of effort into this suit and how it could best protect this teenager, right? And so the look of it, I love. I like the logo of the spider a little bit better. I think it's more of like a throwback to the classic logo, but it's slightly different. But I could be wrong. Like,
No, I think you're right. I think especially on the back. I don't have a photo of the back of the suit, but I can't remember. Is it kind of a fatter spider?
Yeah, it's a fatter spider, I think. It's not like that skinny like
On the
black
Homecoming
logo.
one.
Uh-huh.
So on the back, I don't. Does he have one on
Maybe
the
he
back
doesn't.
for this?
I
I think
can't
in this
remember
one he
now.
doesn't, and that's the thing that I was pretty hard to pick my number 1 because.
So just to recap real quick, sorry to cut you off, Josh.
Yes, no, you're good.
Casey, you want to just go 1 to 4? Number
1, Tom Holland's.
Okay.
Number 2 is the second Andrew Garfield one from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Number 3, Tobey Maguire because of the nostalgia and the dimensions of it. And then number 4 is like the very first
The Amazing Spider-Man one.
That one's like
Okay.
that one's hideous. Like, it's a shame it was made.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either.
I would completely agree. That is also my number 4. Is the one from the first Amazing Spider-Man, which, like, let's be honest, they obviously had plans. That's the only reason that, and it was a pretty good story that the Amazing Spider-Man got the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the sequel, but the suit was obviously the worst one. I looked at it and I really wanted to put Tobey Maguire's at number 2, but I just couldn't. It was good and I liked it, and I thought the color was a lot better than the first Andrew Garfield one, but I had Tobey Maguire's at number 3. And then at number 2, I had The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So Andrew Garfield's, I just loved. I'm pretty sure it was that one where on the back of his, it's just like the really big, like pretty much like the Amazing Spider-Man like logo, you know, the really long one. That one goes like all down his back, and I love that one. It was really hard for me. But then number 1 is the Tom Holland one because I just loved the color of it was really, really good. And even though that they're there, like the spider like webs and stuff aren't just like distracting, and they're not like 3D and like, you know, that you could like be rubbing it up and it'd be like, you know, like if you did that. And so I love that it looked so smooth, just like spandex pretty much. So it was really easy. But then there was also, you know, without you even seeing it, all this technology built into it from Tony Stark. So I thought that it was, even though it was pretty hard, I thought it was a pretty easy decision to say, hey, you know, they're doing good things with it. The Spider-Man Homecoming one is definitely my favorite suit. And I just realized that Casey's and mine were the exact same.
Yeah, you have the exact same order.
Brothers!
And mine's fairly close with one difference, and that's my number 1, number 2. Like you guys said, Amazing Spider-Man 1's costume. It was a good... I thought I liked it. Went back and looked at the pictures, and it's kind of weird. It's got the darker colors that I liked, but the eyes is where it lost me. The eyes are kind of like skinny and gold.
Did he make those out of sunglasses? Is how he built it, right?
I think in the movie he did. Yeah. It's been so long since I've watched him. And then the Tobey Maguire one's a classic. It's my number 3. It looked great for the time, but we've come a long way. My number 2 is actually the Tom Holland one. And this was a hard decision for me because the Tom Holland one's cool. I do like what they added to it. I love all the gadgets. But I grew up on a Spider-Man that didn't have all those crazy gadgets. He had like a spider tracker and maybe like a spider drone in the animated series, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. So like adding all these like gadgets and stuff is cool for this new version, but I'm kind of a fan of him, just like him and his web slingers kind of coming out, you know, getting these scraps and kind of.
He's more of a scrappy superhero,
like... and not he doesn't have to rely on these gadgets. But I think it's been a while since. I mean, I haven't caught up with the comics, but I think in these new comics he's kind of like that. Like he has a lot of these gadgets. So it's like, it's similar to the times. But my favorite one is the Amazing Spider-Man 2 one. I love the colors of it. Like you were saying, it kind of looks like it has some texture. I don't, that's not why I love it, but it does kind of pop a little bit more on screen. Whereas the Tom Holland one can kind of look almost a little too CGI, not quite real.
It does look sort of like, that's part of why, not as like a contradiction. I was like, oh, that's sort of cool because it almost looks like a comic, like on the screen. So that's cool. But then there's both because then it looks really real, which is super awesome.
But the reason, I mean, there's 2 reasons why I did this one. Those reasons I said. Also, the big eyes, I think, they look so good on the mask. They're just big and wide. And then there's something that I remembered, and I'm going to talk about this too in my nitpicks a little bit. But in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the one good thing, there's a couple good things that came out of that movie, but it was when 3D movies were a big thing, and they were trying to do like perspectives, and they had I can't remember the opening sequence, but they had him like jumping off buildings and swinging through New York and stuff. And I remember
talking about like the first person type experience.
Right.
I commented on that earlier today.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this too as we get in a little bit more because I thought that was clever. Like, and that I don't want to like shush under the rug because obviously we're talking about a different movie. Right. But I wanted more of that in this film, and so
this is one of my nitpicks.
Yeah,
is
so
like
we
I
can
missed
talk
that.
about this more, but like I want to talk about that.
Well, I'll hurry and just wrap up my point here. I remember watching that scene of Amazing Spider-Man 2 of the first time he jumps off the building and he does kind of that dive down into the city, and I remember his suit kind of fluttered in the wind. And I was like, that's cool. That makes it feel real. The suit looks awesome. The fluttering's there. And you don't get that with the Tom Holland CGI suit. So that's kind of my... I wish that it had... Like, I love the eyes, but I wish that it had the emotion that Tom Holland suit does. But I think it's still my favorite one.
Awesome. Sweet. So like Vin said, make sure to check out the post that we'll throw up on Instagram and comment which one is your favorite because... We'll definitely want to hear it because we got some pretty similar. Obviously, we all agree that the first Amazing Spider-Man was the lowest. But if you think that it's the best, tell us why. We want to know. We want to hear it. Perfect. So let's go into some more nitpicks. What do you guys?
So yeah, like I said, my first nitpick. I mean, it's so small because I feel like I've been talking a lot, but I'll kick it off to you, Casey. It's cool that we got a different perspective of Spider-Man away from the tall buildings. But now that we've had so much like distance between the Amazing Spider-Man series and this new one coming out, I miss the swinging through the tall cities.
Yeah, well, think about it. Spider-Man's character is primarily like, right, he's just in downtown all the time. That's where he is from, and kind of his like hood. I don't know what you want to call it, like his region. I don't know, his
block,
his block, his like layer. I don't know, like his nest, his web, whatever. But
sure,
whatever you want to call it, like his place that he protects. But yeah, I miss that. I felt like I liked all the big, like when Tom Holland climbs the Washington Monument or whatever. Is that what that is called? The Washington Monument?
Yeah.
He climbs? And so I liked where he climbs that, and he, like, you get the big feeling. Like, you kind of get that headway, and you're like, oh, man, we're up here high. But it wasn't, like, in that first person where, like, I'm going with. Like, this is, I'm in the journey with you as you're falling, right? Because that was the feeling you got. And I'm curious if that was because that was around the time GoPros were getting really big, and maybe that was a way to, show off first-hand footage, what you could show your family to take them along with you when you did something stupid in Bali. I don't know. But, like, what I liked about it and what I wish that there was more of in this movie is that first-person web-slinging, flying through feeling. Because I miss that. I'll, like, just like you, where's my tall buildings and everything? And
it makes me wonder if, I mean, he's so new to being Spider-Man, and he was like so scared of being up high. It makes me wonder if he's even been downtown climbing up on those buildings yet. Because he's like freaking out up there, like, oh, I'm high, oh, I could die up here, I'm high. Like, don't you think you'd kind of be used to that if he was up swinging through downtown New York on all those tall buildings?
Well, he is in a couple of scenes where he's up higher, but he's not on the tallest buildings, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's above the...
No, yeah, he's just like on a water tower that's like above like a little apartment building and a little thing like that. So
and I guess he doesn't really have, on the monument, he doesn't really have anything to catch other than that
You
one
only
building.
got
Well,
building.
his parachute is gone too, right?
But he didn't know he had the parachute until halfway
yeah,
through the
he
movie.
didn't know that,
yeah.
When it popped out and he almost drowned.
That's true.
We haven't even talked about Toombs yet. Sorry, I
Okay,
talked
so-
about his costume.
So
I'm
right
sorry,
before
there's
we
just
get
so much
there,
good of this movie.
I was definitely on board with you guys. I wrote something that was sort of similar that I'm like, I can totally apply that. So one of the only things where I was looking at like the nitpicking was sort of that same sort of thing that when they're going, one of my favorite scenes is the scene on the ferry boat, right? Just cuts the boat in half and then he has to do everything he can to be able to, just web it back together, and eventually Tony Stark has to come and help him. The thing that I missed right there was sort of that same thing where you see him, and even though it's not swinging from a tall building, I just love that first-person perspective and like a long take of him, swinging and doing things. Because I was watching it and I was like, this could really be a lot better, because it was just a lot of quick, rapid shots one after another of him doing this and that, like really fast, trying to do it together. And I thought if they just had like one long take of him swinging up and down and from side to side and the camera just followed him along like that, I feel like it would have been a much cooler shot, and people would have talked about that, like, oh my gosh, like on the ferry boat when it showed him doing that. So I think the same thing there, but then also in the city, like you guys said. But
I mean, it made for some great jokes. Like when he leaves the party and he's running over to go find the explosion, and he runs out into the golf course and he goes and he shoots his web, and then it like pulls back and there's nothing out there and just kind of goes off into the darkness. He's just kind of like, oh. And he just starts sprinting across the thing, And it's cool to see Spider-Man out of his element.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really get that in any of the other ones. So I get why they did it. I just kind of miss it.
yeah, definitely. There's good things both ways. And, when during that same sequence where he was running and everything, I loved all of the, the John Hughes references where he runs to the backyard and they're playing
They're
Ferris
actually
Bueller.
playing Ferris Bueller in
Yeah.
the backyard.
And like he literally just did like the thing they were watching like 10 seconds before the shot
Yeah.
was like the exact same. Loved it. So many.
Whoever's idea it was to make this John Hughes style high school movie is a genius.
Genius. Amazing.
2 thumbs way up from me. Really hard to get, but I can do it sometimes.
But yeah, like you mentioned, Vince, let's talk about Tombs. What were some of our favorite things about the Vulture, or nitpicks?
Sorry, I got 2 more nitpicks, and they're very, very small.
Okay.
Sweet. Let's do it.
Before we go into who stands out. One was the swinging through the city. 2 was the girl who plays Michelle, I think her name is Zendaya.
So MJ, yeah.
Yeah, MJ. She's a great actress. A little too woke sometimes for me. Like all of her lines are kind of like, oh, I want to go protest. Oh, I want to do this. I just kind of want to see
She's
her.
like, she's like a nihilist, right? I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's what I read. So
Oh, okay. She's great in this movie. Like Zendaya's a great actress, and I'm really looking forward to her in the next one because I think they're gonna play up that relationship more. I just didn't. There wasn't a lot of her in this, and the only stuff that you saw was kind of that, and so I kind of want to see her, kind of like act with Peter a little bit more. And my only other thing was the Karen, his suit lady. Again, I grew up with a Spider-Man who inner monologues and talks to himself a lot, and that doesn't work for movies, so I get it. But he's kind of like a mini Tony Stark now with his suits, with all of his gadgets. Small nitpick, still love the movie. Kind of, I don't know, it's fine. It's great.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's all my nitpicks.
Freaking Karen.
And then I did have one more when I was thinking about it. Nitpick was that the very, very end, and this is where I remember like a bit of my disappointment coming from, the very end fight on the beach when they're fighting each other. I just thought it was a little bit anticlimactic because there's so many good fights, and up on the plane and when the plane's coming down, everything is just amazing. I just thought it was a pretty lame way to end it, that he gave Peter the choice when he was in the car earlier. He's like, you leave my business alone or I'll kill your family and everyone you care about. And then all of a sudden they're down on the beach and he's like, oh dude, look at this box. I'm going to fly away with this box while like my wing seat is like blowing up. And so like, I get it. It was all cool that it showed that Spider-Man was a good guy and he saved this guy, even though they were like fighting and trying to kill each other. I just thought it was so dumb that he had Peter and could have literally killed him. But then he's like, oh, hey, like, I'm going to grab this box of stuff and fly away. And then Peter saves him. And I didn't like that. That was me.
I think where you have to look at it in that regards and aspects is he talks about what's the most important thing to him, and he's like right, he's a bird, right? In this, like, the ideas of him like having the thing of the bird, like he's just taking something home to feed his family.
Yeah, he's a
like that's
scavenger,
really,
right?
Scavenger, yeah. So that's like his thing. But yeah, it was weird. Like, I love the fighting in the air and then on the plane, and then you're right. It was a little anticlimactic, but I think that builds into like the bigger story of what we're gonna see of this Peter Parker and this Spider-Man. So that's just me, right?
No, like, I liked the idea that, you know, it shows that he is a really good guy and ends up saving his life because he would have died if he wasn't there. He could have killed him super easy. He was like pass out on the ground. It's what he said he was gonna do. And obviously, you know, he couldn't actually kill him. I was just thinking story-wise, that was one of my only like disconnects that I thought could have been a little bit better, but it definitely brought in some good things that, you know, like Casey said, is important to the Spider-Man that we have today. So yeah, anyways, what do we want to talk about with who stood out for you guys?
Let's talk about Tombs. Can we talk about Tombs?
Michael Keaton.
Let's
the
talk
man.
about that twist.
Oh my gosh.
So, Casey, you didn't see it in theater.
No, I did not.
I want to hear your reaction to that moment.
I called it though.
Oh, did you?
I called it. That was the
We
funniest
were-
thing. I turned around to Josh. I was like, "Oh yeah, I knew this," and he was like, "What?" I was waiting for you to like be surprised. I was like, "I figured it
No,
out."
I was waiting the whole movie, and Casey said he had been thinking about it, but it also wasn't just BS because literally,
Wow.
as Peter Parker was walking up to the door, Casey was like, what if her dad is that guy, the Vulture? And I was like, are you serious? I've been waiting for this
really
moment.
love movies like that. You know, like, I'll be honest with you. Like, I kind of... Okay, so let's talk about Tombs, like, from the very beginning when you see him, right? So he has a contract to, like, clear up all this scrap metal, right? And he's, like, just doing a hard day's work, right? Like, he might be a little bit skeezy back then, but I don't really know if he was to the extent he becomes, right? And then in comes the government with Tony Stark's folks. And like, nope, can't be here. Sorry, if you have a problem, take it up with our superiors. No questions asked. And he like, you know, then he has to become this thing out of necessity, I think. Because when you're pushed and forced into a corner of what you believe is like what's going to work for you, you're going to do anything. And that's kind of where his like mentality towards his family comes in, and where he wants to provide and take care of. And he probably has to live a lie and fabricate this huge BS story to his like wife and kid. He's like, oh yeah, just your local scrapyard boy, just hustling hard. Like, what are you doing? Stealing cars off the street, man? You can't live in a house like that, just bumming scrap metal, as far as I understand. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not a scrapper, but you don't live in a house like that and drive those cars just like that.
Right.
But no, he really stood out the whole film, and like the actor Michael Keaton, great guy, but like his like, if I had not known who he was as an actor, I would have been fully convinced that's the way he was all the time.
Oh, his performance in that scene, like, it's so good. I saw this in theaters.
Which scene are you talking about? Sorry.
The twist.
The twist.
So when you find
I
out
got way far out of there.
when Peter shows up, knocks on the door, and Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton, is standing there, who's been built up as this menacing bad guy through the whole thing. Turns out it's Peter's girlfriend's dad. Everyone in the theater gasped, including myself, audibly.
No, I freaked out.
You know,
I freaked out, for sure.
Yeah, same way, right? Such a cool twist, and the payoff of Michael Keaton's acting is what made it work so good. Because it could have been just like that one moment of just like, oh wow, it's him, you know. But that entire next 5-minute, 10-minute stretch of the just like
the realization creeping in.
Yeah, and just Michael Keaton, the way he plays it, and like when he realized that Peter is Spider-Man, and the way that he just like is thinking through it all, and it's just so tense for that entire scene, taking pictures with the parents and everything, and Peter's like watching him. Like, I felt uncomfortable sitting it, like, and this is my second time through. I've seen this movie before, I knew it was coming, but I still felt that, just like, I felt like I was there. I felt like I was Peter, that tense, like. And I think it's just all thanks to Michael Keaton. That guy is such an amazing actor. He pulled it off so well.
No, yeah, definitely. And I know what you're talking about, the whole feeling uncomfortable, but it like adds to it so much when they're sitting in the car and you can just see him looking in the rearview mirror and he's like, good old Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
so
oh, gosh, he's so amazing. Like, definitely for me, I love Tom Holland and I think that he's like the best Spider-Man that they could have picked.
Mm-hmm.
But Michael Keaton's got to be like my standout performance of the entire movie. Like, such an amazing performance. He's been in so many great things, but just I loved it so much.
Yeah, he really, like, he took the cake, man. Like, he should get something for that. I bet he got a fat paycheck, obviously, but he made the film, and I think that's something sometimes we lack, is a villain with a lot of depth, right? Who's consistent, like, his behavior is the same, and even when he's like trying to be like this sweet sugary dad, right? You can just, it's the same. I didn't feel any change. Like, I was like, wow, this guy.
Hey, Pedro.
Yeah, he was just like calling names. And then like he drops the glove box, yanks out the pistol,
gun.
and like just casually sticks up there. He's like, listen, you can, like Josh said, you can drop it. We can forget this ever happened. Got to protect my family. Or, you know, we're going to hash this out. And in the end, as we've talked about, like they hash it out. But yeah, he did good. And you have to, like you said, like you have to give credit where credit is due. Tom Holland, like getting, you know, whatever you want to call it, like his, what is this? Like he's working with the guy, right? Like he's working with Toomes, and his reverse acting like is so good. Like his reactions to everything, the feeling, you feel what he feels. Because I remember like going to, you know, a date's house and being uncomfortable, but can you imagine like the heaviness of like, sick probably. Like he probably wasn't like he bails on the dance in the end, right? But he was just like, ugh. Yeah.
And that says something for Tom Holland's acting too, like you were saying. Like Tom Holland, this 20-year-old kid, is holding his own with Robert Downey Jr. and Michael Keaton, and is keeping up with them. You know, like that says something for his acting, which also says something else for Michael Keaton, that he stole the show over the perfect actor for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out Tom Holland's performance when he gets crushed by the I talked about it before, by the building.
Amazing.
I teared up the first time I saw that in the theater. Like, I mean, I didn't like cry or anything, but I remember like I felt that. Like I felt sad for him, and his reaction of like crying for help, you know? It's like he really felt like a kid that was at the end of his rope, you know, really thought he was going to die, calling for someone to come help me, and then coming to that realization that he's like, I'm Spider-Man, I can do this. And how he's like pushing him, he's like, come on, Spider-Man, come on, Spider-Man. Like he does great too. Yeah. I think Michael Keaton, I think he's the standout in this movie.
Definitely. I think we're all in agreement there. Shout out Michael Keaton. Of course, we know you're probably listening to this somewhere. So. Yeah,
of course he is.
Exactly.
He's a weekly listener of ours.
Amazing. So yeah, so definitely love that. I just sort of building off of that, moving into our final thoughts of the movie. I just loved how even though I agree with you, Vince, as far as like, you know, Spider-Man, he's like got all these new gadgets and there's someone talking to him and the thing. And so even though it's not the classic Spider-Man, I think that something that's super important that I loved in this movie is that he earned being Spider-Man by the whole entire, that part where he like has to lift like the building off of him, and when he has the final fight and he goes up on the plane, he does it in like his sweatshirt and goggles, like jumpsuit, without any of Tony Stark's stuff.
What is it Tony says, like if you're nothing with, what was it?
If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it, or something like that. And so that's what pushes him, you know, that he really should be able to do it. And so that's where
awesome.
That's where I'm like, it's okay that, you know, like he has all this new stuff now, because I like the new stuff and it gives for a lot of cool things because he earned it. He did what he had to do. Sure. He defeated the main villain of this movie, at least, without it. And so I feel like he earned it. Like, he's Spider-Man. Come on, Spider-Man. Like,
and I agree 100%. Like, it's such a small nitpick. I had to find something to nitpick, you know? And I was like,
so good.
Oh, not my Spider-Man. Like, I love this version of Spider-Man. The interaction that he had with Karen was great. The suit lady, you know, it's great. So it works. I just, it's such a small, tiny thing that I like, I'm used to having from a kid. I love this new version. I want to see more of this new version. Again, keep it up. Marvel, with your costume designs. Spider-Man with a yellow suit and hoodie. Spider-Man with hoodies apparently just looks awesome. They did it with this, and they did it with Into the Spider-Verse too. This movie's just fantastic, and everyone should watch it. I guess that's really all I have to say about it. Like, this is one of my favorites.
Can I bring something up? I've been wanting to say this, and I keep forgetting about it. So this is going back to our suit conversation earlier, and something we've actually missed talking about. But I brought up the scene, but I didn't talk the features of the scene that I'm loving right now, which is they brought back the webs under the arms so you could fly a little bit. Like that, I thought about that when I saw it. I was like, what is that? And I had to like look like later in the night when I was like just reviewing and researching a little bit more. And that's something that they've taken out of all of the movies. Like those have not been in any of the films, and it actually showcases that they really put a lot of thought. Like going into your costume design and talking about that, like that is probably the best decision they could have made, because it's a throwback to the comics, right? The early comics. So it's just really good. And yeah, I'm sorry I got sidetracked and taking us back. But also I want to like ask a question of you guys and tell me what you guys think. So in the 2003 Spider-Man, which I think is the first one that came out of with Tobey Maguire, right? And this is just kind of my closing thoughts on everything. Do you think, like, the Uncle Ben and Aunt May, right? They were a pretty big part of the film. But in this one, I didn't necessarily feel that Aunt May was as hefty as a character as the other film, right? Like, it's, like, I felt like she was just a concerned aunt, you know? But she wasn't, like, involved. Like, I felt no.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that, because we've seen it. Like, it's like the Batman story. We've seen his parents die so many times. We don't need to see it again. We know. Yeah. You know, and they've done the Aunt May Peter story so many times, we get it, and I think they just want to do something new with it. Yeah, I would assume.
And so she's there enough that it's still Spider-Man, and he's still got Aunt May. They didn't mention Uncle Ben at all, which is, you know, some people are like, you know, it's good, it's new, it's fresh. But also with the whole integration into the Marvel universe, the story has to focus more on that and what Peter is doing for that instead of his backstory, because...
But they did find a cool way to cover it, like, and his origin story too. They found a really cool way to cover it in Ben. Is that his name? I keep
Uncle
getting
Ben.
No, sorry. His friend. I keep forgetting Ned.
Ned.
Yeah. In Ned, like, asking him questions. You know, like, how'd you get your powers? You got bit by a spider? Can I get bit too? Did it hurt? I don't want to. Wait, yes I do. You know, like, and you learn
dead,
throughout this like really quick comedy bit. You learn the rules, and even smart. Like Peter brings up Uncle Ben without actually saying Uncle Ben. It's just like, oh yeah, Aunt May, she's been through a lot, and we know the story. We all know the story so well that we get it. We know what she went through. So I don't feel like it was missing it. I feel like they passed over it quickly.
Yeah, I guess we didn't really have to dwell on it as much, and maybe like I was just feeling nostalgic, kind of like you were talking earlier.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But. Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I was just like kind of curious if anyone else felt like that was different enough that I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, what happened? But I guess, like, when you recap that, because remember, I just watched it for the first time, distracted by my dog, pausing the movie 3 times. But, yeah, I guess, like, looking at it now, like, after kind of that communication, I guess I feel complete, because I forgot completely about the interaction where he's talking about his origin and going out. So thank you for refreshing me, and I guess, like, that is the end of my thoughts on this movie. I would recommend it, and I'm excited for the next one now that I've seen this so recent that I feel that when I go to this next movie, because I was going to go no matter what, like if I'd seen this first one or not, because I was like, I've watched the other movies, like I'm fine with going, but this will help.
Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah, and so, I mean, not to go too long here, but what do you guys think as the new one is coming out? What do we expect to see, just in some quick thoughts, from Far From Home that we think needs to happen for it to succeed?
I don't know. I want to know how he reacts to Tony's death, kind of play that out. I think that'll be kind of an interesting thing, and I'm most interested in the Mysterio story. I think Jake Gyllenhaal has been an actor who needs to get into these movies, and it'll be interesting to see because the trailer makes him out to be a good guy, so it'll be interesting to see kind of where they take that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I am super excited for the Jake Gyllenhaal part, and I think that they need to be smart about what they do with the after effects of Endgame and the snap and people being gone for 5 years and then coming back. Like, you have to play it smart, and if you play it smart, it can be a super interesting story and can give you really good, layers, because, they're in high school, and when, Thanos snapped, there's no way that every single one of his friends stayed. Like, some people are going to be 5 years older and some people are going to be 5 years younger. Like, how do they handle that? If you just gloss over that, that's just, not cool. But if they do go into that in depth, I feel like that's going to be super interesting, and they can play it really well, be really smart. I'm excited.
Ditto. No. I'm excited to see how they do, especially like where Josh is talking. We've talked about this before, and so that's something I've been curious about, is how they are going to play the continuation of the universe. Like, we're missing a couple of superheroes. Like, they're dead. I'm using quotation marks because their contracts died out. But really, I'm curious to see really what's next for the whole world, the universe, right? Because there's a lot of changes going to happen, and now he's going to be playing with different, it's a different game now, right? The world has changed. And I saw today some spoilers for the next suit. I don't know if I want to talk about it or if I should, but it looks kind of like he's some sort of, like, it's like black on black. It's like a really tight
like
looking,
a stealth suit or something.
Yeah, it looks cool. So I'm excited to see kind of where our story is leading us, like what part of the universe, the world, wherever it's going to take us, because I want to know now. So really, I'm trying not to like get too deep into it, because I know that there's so much you could talk about, but really I'm ready.
All right, guys, perfect. So that is what we're waiting for Spider-Man Far From Home, coming out in just 3 weeks. So be sure to check us out on Spotify, Instagram, however you listen to this. Let us know what you think. What were your reactions to Homecoming? What you're excited for?
Yeah, again,
for Far From Home.
The Instagram account is the Pause Rewind Play Podcast. Super simple. Jump over there, give us a follow. That's where we will kind of interact with the audience most.
Yeah, exactly. Follow us on there. We'll be posting a few things about this, about our upcoming episodes, which this next week we will be reviewing I Am Mother. It's a movie that's new and it's available right now on Netflix. So be sure to go check that out.
Looks awesome.
Looks so awesome. I watched the trailer today. I hadn't heard about it, and they showed me the trailer, and I'm like, okay, we're doing this movie no matter what you guys say. Looks awesome. Check it out on Netflix so that you can, go along with us next week and with your thoughts on I Am Mother. So be sure to check us out streaming, and, if you liked what you saw, subscribe, what you heard.
Give us a review as well. Like, if you, the only way for us to get better or improve these is also for feedback, right? And this is new to us, so we could use the feedback. But remember, I'm a little fragile. Don't be too harsh. No, I'm just kidding. You can let us know. And if you feel like, hey, I don't want to post this publicly, just message us. We're real people. We'll communicate back to you. But be honest and let us know what we can do, because we're looking to improve and grow this out really to something that people really genuinely are excited to listen to. So thank you for tuning in with us. And anything else we got to cover?
No, I think we're good.
No. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Pause, Rewind, Play podcast, and we'll talk about movies with you